It's Rip here. I'm here with Carrie Barrett, and it is Friday. It's Good Friday, isn't it, Carrie?
It is Good Friday. Yes, a bit of a misnomer in the Christian world, but we're good. But we're going with it. I'm old school Catholic, so Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and then we have Easter Sunday to look forward to.
Yes, and so today is Friday, April 7th. And, please let us know where you guys are calling in from, tuning in from. I see Norway, I see Maryland. And for those of you that don't know, I'm here today with Carrie Barrett. Many of you know who Carrie is, but if you don't, she is one of the producers, I should say the producer of the PlantStrong podcast. She also ran our Team PlantStrong event here in Austin, Texas, just a couple of weeks ago. And Carrie is a rock star in and around all things PlantStrong. So, Carrie, thanks for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure, Rip. Always a pleasure. I've been a fan for 15 years, and so it's an honor to be working side by side with you as always.
Yeah. So today we're going to answer some of your pressing questions.
Yeah.
And Carrie, I know that you've got a couple, but also please, everybody, feel free to post a question in the comment section, and then we will do our best to answer that question.
Yeah. And the thing with Rip being who he is and being so open and so transparent is that we at PlantStrong get a ton of emails and a ton of questions about just the everyday struggles and inquiries that you have. And so many of them are similar, but equally important. And so the ones that I have selected are what I consider some of the most common and most popular questions that we get. And they're themed around things like time and money, oil, smoothies, talking about fasting a little bit, and how Rip, as a lifelong athlete, how he feels himself. So those were some of the questions that I pulled out from emails, and we'll rattle through some of those, and then we'll also pick some from the chat as well. But I think what I want to start off, Rip, if you don't mind, is just, this is such a common question, and I feel it, and I know a lot of other people feel it too. And I pulled this right from our Facebook page, which is, I do not have a creative cooking bone in my body. How am I supposed to survive when I have zero idea how to cook?
So before I dive into that, I just want to, let's go back for a sec, because I see a comment from Valerie saying, how did the race go with Team PlantStrong? And since that happened, that was February, right?
Yeah. Yes, I know.
It was the weekend of my birthday, so I should remember that. And, thank you for asking, Valerie. How many people did we have come in person? Was it about 80?
It ended up being about 80, 85. We had, 90 plus signed up, and then life happens with things. So we had about 80, 85 people came in person, and then another 70 to 80 were signed up for the virtual races. So we had about 150 total people for this first go around on Team PlantStrong. And it was overwhelming for me, in a very positive way. Overwhelming. We've got something.
We were really well represented. We had people do the 5K, the half marathon, the marathon. We were out there, and to me, we looked better than Team Dairy, Team Beef. I mean, we were the schnizzle dizzle.
Yes. Yeah. And what I loved, and I want to stress this, is that it wasn't all runners or fast people. We had more people in representing us in the 5K than we did in the half and the full. And so I throw that out there to challenge anyone, regardless of what stage you're at in life or what age or condition you think that you might be in. A 5K is a huge accomplishment for so many people. And we celebrated that as big as we celebrated the people who did the full marathon.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's jump into some of these questions. And then after this one, let's take Victoria Perry's, which is a good one as well.
Got it.
But so I don't have a creative cooking bone in my body. How can I survive this way of eating? Um, you know, everybody's got to start somewhere. And you may think that you don't have a creative cooking bone in your body, and that's okay. And when you get started, I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. Anybody can cook oatmeal. You can cook rice. If you don't want to put it on the stovetop, then just get frozen rice, get frozen quinoa. Everybody can throw something into a microwave if you don't want to cook it on a stovetop. But literally, we're talking steel cut oats, oatmeal, rice, different grains that don't really require anything but a microwave. And then if you want to, you can get a rice cooker or just some sort of a cooker to do your oatmeal, to do your rice. And those things are just no-brainers. Instapots. We've got a rice cooker. I can't remember the brand name off the top of my head. And then again, pasta, salads, fruits. I was just telling a bunch of people 15 minutes ago that on average every day I have 12 pieces of fruit, and there's no cooking required, right? So I don't need a creative cooking bone in my body to have a mandarin orange followed by a banana, followed by a mango, right? And then sandwiches. How easy are sandwiches to make? Open face sandwiches, right? A little bit of bread. Maybe I want it toasted to give it a little bit of a nice texture. And then I'll put on some hummus. I'll just slice up cucumbers, bell pepper, some arugula on top, and then some spices. How easy is that, Carrie?
Oh my gosh. You just described what I had for lunch yesterday, the open face sandwich, except in addition to the hummus and the spinach, I also put a layer of refried, unsalted black beans, refried black beans, and spread that on top. So I had extra protein both in my, both in my beans and in my hummus and in the spinach, because there's protein in everything, right? So yeah, you just described how simple it was. And I always tell people what are the things that you eat on a normal basis? If it's burgers and pizza, great. Let's plant strongify that. There are recipes out there. So I don't feel like you have to be creative, a Food Network level chef to make this fun and simple and so good.
That's a good point. And just to piggyback on what you just said, I always tell people that's how I got a bunch of Texas male firefighters to do this, is we took their fan favorites, which is just pizza, burgers, and fajitas, and we PlantStrongified them. So this is really, it's not difficult. So don't let that get in your way for a second.
Exactly. We'll throw Victoria's question up here now. This is a really good question.
Yeah. So I want to go plant-based, but because it's so heavy on carbs, if you have a large amount of weight to lose, I hear it's not good to go plant-based. Well, I would say that there's a lot of noise around eating too many carbs, and carbs will make you gain weight. But the reality is that the vast majority of America is eating the wrong kind of carbohydrates. They're eating trashy, refined carbohydrates. They're not eating the carbohydrates that Carrie and I are talking about: fruits, vegetables, whole intact grains, and of course, potatoes, legumes, lentils, beans, and then, limited amounts of nuts and seeds. And if you're doing that, I want you to know that it's fine if the composition of how you're eating on a daily basis is 70% to 75% to 80% carbohydrates. I would tell you say that my diet probably is 75% carbohydrates. And know that if you look at macronutrients, there's 4 calories in a gram of carbohydrates. There's 4 calories in a gram of protein. There's 9 calories in a gram of fat. And so really it's the fats that we want to kind of steer away from, especially the unhealthy fats. And so, I would say if I had to break it down, I'm probably 70% carbohydrates, 15% fat, and 15% protein. which, and I don't play that game, and I don't want any of you to, but when you're just eating a whole food, PlantStrong way of eating, that's generally how it kind of shakes out at the end of the day. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I would also consider the calorie density and the nutrient density of things like potatoes and quinoa. These are, you get so much bang for your buck calorically and nutritionally. And our body, as people who move, whether you're an athlete or not, our body runs on carbohydrate. And so just to stress what Rip said, if you eating a ton of carbs can be bad when those carbs are M&Ms and when those carbs are sugar. You're going to be hard pressed to eat too much if you're eating carbohydrate in the form of potatoes and quinoa and things that have a lot of fiber in them as well. So fear not the carbohydrate, please. Fear not the carbohydrate. You mentioned fat, Rip.
Yeah. But I want to add, because one of the things I always do in my presentation on calorie density is I talk about the potato and how the potato is like one of the most perfect foods out there. I could live on potatoes, and a potato is about 350 calories a pound. But what really kind of gets people is when it's what you put on your potato. It's what you put on your bread. It's what you put on your pasta, what you put on your oatmeal. It's these, what you put on these great carbohydrate wealthy foundational ingredients. So are you putting 2 scoops of peanut butter on top of your oatmeal? Are you putting sour cream and butter and cheese and bacon bits on top of your baked potato? Are you putting mayonnaise, 3 globs of mayonnaise on top of your bread? What are you putting on your salad? Are you putting, a Caesar dressing that's 110 calories per tablespoon? This is what is making us gain weight. It's not the complex, healthy carbohydrates.
Amen. A question that I had siphoned from some of our questions that we get a lot, and you mentioned fat being 9 calories per gram. And here's a very, very popular question. Let's just address it right at the outset, because no doubt someone's going to ask about it, which is oil. And everyone talks about the Mediterranean diet being very healthy, but it can be oil heavy. It's not necessarily. I think that's also a misnomer. I would consider the Mediterranean diet also very vegetable heavy. So give us your 411 on oils.
Well, yeah. So I feel like a broken record on the oil, but oils are the most calorie rich, nutrient dense food on the planet at 120 calories a tablespoon. They really have no nutritional oomph to speak of whatsoever. I like to say they're a black hole of nothingness, and it truly is the triumph of marketing over science. And most Americans are putting between 3 to 6 tablespoons, or I should say ingesting between 3 to 6 tablespoons of some sort of oil into their bodies every single day. And if you don't know how to read a label, I can guarantee you there's 3 or 4 oils in every one of your boxed, packaged, and canned goods. So between what you're adding at home and ingesting in packaged goods, it adds up in a hurry. So we want to be really mindful of that. And as far as the Mediterranean, you kind of touched upon it here, Carrie, but the Mediterranean diet truly was based on the island of Crete back in the 1950s. It was very, very poor island. And the vast majority of their calories were coming from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, limited amounts of fish. And then, of course, yes, they did have some olive oil there, but their health was in spite of the olive oil. It was the large preponderance of the plants, the whole plants that they were eating. And the sad tragedy is, if you go to Crete today, they're eating kind of the standard Western diet now. They've got, diet centers everywhere. They're doing these surgeries where they're stapling people's stomachs. So Crete, which used to be really the ideal when it came to a healthy culture, is now, they've been sucked down the old meat hole, and it's super sad. But yes, let's really reduce and try to eliminate all added processed refined oils.
And yeah, it's just to drive it home again. I mean, if you think about it, and I know you don't advocate for people to log and track their calories or food necessarily, and neither do I, unless you have a very specific purpose to do so. But if you think about, if you put peanut butter in your oatmeal, there's fat and oil in that. If you get a normal standard jar salad dressing, even if you have the best, healthiest lunch, salad for lunch, there's oil in that. If you have a beautiful pasta dish at night, I guarantee you, if you're getting pasta sauce out of a jar, more than likely there's oil in that. And so it just adds up and you don't realize it. And so that is something to be cognizant of. Even if you don't cook with oil, which you and I do not, but just know that it's prevalent in almost anything that we get. So that's why I know you say limit it or get rid of it as much as you possibly can. Yeah. There's this was a fun question, and just kind of going along the lines of the food and trying to create plant strong versions of our favorites. How do you make your fajitas, Rip?
Yeah, so there's lots of different ways to do fajitas. Instead of the beef, you can do portobello mushroom fajitas. You can do tempeh. You can do tofu. You can do butternut squash. You can even do cactus, which, I'm telling you, it's surprisingly good. And then the bell peppers and the onions, we do that. And it's, instead of being Crisco, we like doing that in a veggie broth. And then we also do a no refried bean. We do those in cans. You can get them at the store, a no fat refried bean. And then we put them on corn tortillas with salsa and a guacamole, and you're good to go.
Yum. That sounds delicious.
Yeah.
I don't know the cactus one. I've tried jackfruit as well. I'm hit or miss on jackfruit, but I love tempeh and I love tofu in my fajitas or my tacos. We're getting some questions a lot in the chat regarding a plant-based diet, a whole food plant-based diet's ability to kind of be a cure-all for things like acne and skin disease. What have you found on that, Rip? And I know that you have some friends where that has worked.
Yeah, no, I do. Listen, so many skin disorders are really a function of what we're putting under our body, and some inflammation, an inflammatory response that is a reaction to kind of the foods we're eating. And you need to look no farther than Nina and Randa Nelson, who wrote The Clear Skin Diet several years ago. And they had, I wish I could pull up some of these before and after photos, but it was this cystic acne that they both got at the age of about 21. They're identical twins, brutal. And they were young, aspiring actresses and singers. And, one of them got suicidal. It was so bad. It was just brutal. And since they were born, these two are whole food plant-based. But the interesting thing is they were doing all kinds of fatty plant-based foods. So they were just loading up on the peanut butter, the avocado, the nuts, the seeds, some of the higher fatty plant-based foods. And it was actually Dr. John McDougall that said, you guys need to go on a really, really low whole food plant-based diet. And literally within a month, no more outbreaks, skin started to clear up. And today, Yes, there's some scarring there, but it's very, very minimal. And it is night and day what they were able to achieve. And it's the same thing with psoriasis and things of this nature. It's incredible what a whole food plant-based diet can do. And if that's not addressing it, take it to the next step and go low fat, whole food, plant-based. Mm-hmm. So that's all I'll say about that, Carrie.
Okay. We're getting the oil questions continue, and these kind of go hand in hand. Lori asked, of course, how do you roast veggies without oil? And then a follow-up question that Victoria had was, what do you guys use in place of oil? So very similar questions.
Yeah. So on a skillet, like when I'm starting, you start about just every recipe with onions, and I find that you don't need anything. I have an iron skillet at home, and just throw it in there, and those onions will basically give off some moisture. At some point, you might want to add a little water or veggie broth, orange juice, carrot juice, or something like that if you want to impart a little flavor. Same thing with mushrooms, same thing with bell peppers. When I do a stir fry, I do my onions first, take them out. Then I'll put in like my bell peppers and mushrooms, take them out. Carrots, when I do carrots, I like them to be in there for a long time so they get really soft. And I usually do those alone. But I never use any oil. It's just a fluid. You need a fluid instead. Now, if I'm going to be roasting veggies, this is where parchment paper is an absolute savior. You just crumple up the parchment paper, lay it out there, put your whatever you want to put on top, whether it's your potatoes, whether it's your onions, your corn, and then you just let the oven, put it on 400, 425, 450, and let it bake. And it will bring out all these wonderful nuanced flavors that are there in these vegetables. And so much of eating PlantStrong and having it be delicious is roasting your vegetables, which really brings out some flavors that you never even knew were there.
And I'm a huge fan of air frying as well. I know that the Rip Esselstyn household, for some reason, on God's green earth, still does not have an air fryer or an Instant Pot. You don't have either of those, do you?
Just got the Instant Pot.
Okay, they are staples in my kitchen. They are staples in my kitchen. And the air fryer, if you are going to be air frying vegetables, you don't need to put a thing on them. You don't need to put a thing on them unless you want to put some spices, but absolutely zero oil required for an excellent, excellent taste. So thanks for that question. So
I'm jumping in here and I'm putting stuff up there too. But I just want to say that, I'm reading some of these comments that I love, like so mindful, spelled SOW. That's cute. Says carbs keep us PlantStrong. They absolutely do. And then Tammy right below says, I've just lost over 30 pounds since January 1st, eating sweet potatoes every day. You need to get in touch with Adam Sudd, the plant-based addict. He couldn't agree with you more. Savory oatmeal, like Ann Esselstyn has. I've had it and it's fantastic. Couldn't agree with you more. So thoughts on tofu? Love tofu. Absolutely adore tofu. We have it several times a week in my household. I've got 3 young kids. Yes, tofu is about 40% fat. Comes from the soybean. I do recommend, if you're going to do soy products, make them organic. But for everybody that's out there that's spooked about estrogen, know that the actual phytoestrogens in edamame, in tofu, in soy milk, in tempeh, miso, these actually can block the hormonally active compounds like estrogen that are in your bodies. So it blocks those receptors. So don't be spooked by tofu, no matter what your best friend or next door neighbor has to say about that. Yeah.
And speaking of, somebody asked, and I could scroll up and try to find it here, but speaking of spooking our neighbors and trying to deal with some naysayers, where there was a question in the chat about, what do I tell people who tell me that there's too much sugar in fruit, that I shouldn't be eating blueberries because of all the sugar, which just breaks my heart that that we should have to defend nature's candy, that we should have to defend the healthiest piece of food on the planet.
No, it's super unfortunate. And, we had a woman that came to one of our Sedona retreats several years ago. She hadn't had a piece of fruit in over a year because her trainer had her on the keto diet. And she was so scared that having a piece of fruit would just pile on the pounds. And the fact of the matter is, fruit runs between 200 to 300 calories per pound. It's very calorie light. It's nutrient dense. It's loaded with so many amazing things, from water, fiber, phytonutrients, antioxidants, vitamins, minerals. And yes, it's got sugars. And these are fantastic, healthy sugars that come attached to all this fiber, which actually act like a big log in the fire. So we're not scared of the sugar in fruit because it comes attached to all this wonderful fiber. So like I said earlier, Carrie, I have 10 to 12 pieces of fruit a day.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's Robbie and Cyrus would say, that's nothing. They have 10 to 12 bananas a day.
That's exactly right. Cyrus and Robbie are our friends from Mastering Diabetes. Yeah.
What about, again, kind of dealing with myths, Rip, because I feel like a lot of what we have to deal with as advocates for a plant-strong diet, or we're just dealing with myths that are out there. Bro science, faux science, you name it. And here's one that's like, oh my gosh, where am I going to get calcium if I'm not drinking milk?
Well, it's a great question. And, calcium, like magnesium, like potassium, all these minerals come from the ground. They come from the earth. There's 17 major and minor minerals. And the best absorbable and retainable source of these minerals comes from plants that like romp and play in the dirt with these minerals. And so, for example, calcium, when you're getting your calcium from green leafies, from grains, from tofu, your body's able to absorb close to 60% of that calcium. When you're getting it from dairy and cow's products, it's closer to maybe 10%. And so it's the smartest, it's the safest, and know that these plant-based foods that you're eating throughout the day are loaded with calcium, and you'll be easily meeting your RDA for calcium. The thing that's really hurting us with osteopenia, it's not calcium. It's the fact that we're sitting all day long. We're not actually doing weight-bearing exercise. And our bones, they're like muscles. If we don't use them, they basically turn to styrofoam. And so we got to be active. And whether it's, hiking, whether it is getting a 25-pound vest and wearing it around the house, whether it's actually going to the gym or getting weights at home and doing something with dumbbells and weights. But you need those stressors on your bones in order for your bones to build the osteoblasts that will allow those bones to become strong. So, calcium's, it's one of the pieces of the puzzle, but it's not by any means the most important piece of the puzzle. The most important piece is, are you stressing your bones by doing weight-bearing activity?
That's a great explanation, Rip. Thank you. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on cacao powder. Do you have any?
I'm on a heart healthy diet. Well, I think if it's just cacao powder, and that's it, it should be zero fat. I think that's absolutely fine. In fact, I just made some chocolate mousse the other day. It's a recipe from, I think, Engine 2, where it was just, I took avocados, which, yes, are a lot of fat, but I took avocados, cacao powder, a little bit of maple syrup, and just kind of like put that all in the Vitamix blender, and I had chocolate pudding for the group. So I think in and of itself, cacao powder is absolutely fine.
That's great. I have a question that I populated, and it's a bit of it's a personal question, but I I think I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of the audience, which is, you know, you like you have mentioned that sometimes in some of your food you'll use avocado, you'll use tofu, you'll even use cashews, for instance, to make certain like your mac and cheese. Whereas your dad, Dr. Esselstyn, is 100% not going to use any of that. And so there might be some confusion there between, what Essie talks about and maybe what you talk about. So if there's any confusion, can you clear some of that up, and when it might be okay to use some of that, some of that fat in your food?
Yeah. So this purely, the answer to this is it depends upon where you are on your health journey. So if you have type 2 diabetes, if you have heart disease, if you've had a brush across the bow with cancer, then I would recommend that you're really, really careful and maybe even eliminate some of the higher fat plant-based foods like tofu, tempeh, avocados, nuts, these things. Because I don't have heart disease, because my children don't have heart disease, because we're super, super active, we're okay doing some of these things. Now, we're not like, we don't eat them to a point that's egregious, right? So when I say an avocado, yeah, I may have half of an avocado a day. I'll have 1 to 2 ounces of nuts a day. In that cashew mac and cash recipe, we use cashews, but we also have, nutritional yeast in there. We have roasted red bell peppers in there. We have lime juice, and it's fantastic for our family. But if you have heart disease, I would tell you, instead of using cashews, use sweet potatoes, use butternut squash, use another ingredient that will actually serve the same purpose. And you'll absolutely, you'll hardly notice the difference. So yeah, to me, it just comes down to, if you've got one of these chronic Western diseases, then I think it's really incumbent upon you to do your best to be on a whole food, low fat, plant-based diet, and be really careful about when you're eating these higher fat foods.
And I know, even as somebody who trains quite a bit for running races and triathlons, which is what I do, I always know when I need to back it down, because I'll feel it, because I do, like, I love me some peanut butter, and I love hummus, and I love tofu. And if I do start to kind of look at my allocation during the day of calories, I'm like, ooh, that's about 50% fat today. Like, you ate a lot of, calorically dense stuff. So then I know I need to start backing it off. So it's not like I'm not logging everything I put in my mouth, but I'm always aware of, like, how could I have made that better or lighter? So yes, that's my perspective on it too. Like, I just know when I know I need to scale it back a little bit.
Yeah. I hear you there. And if you're athletic like that and you're very in tune with your weight, like when I was doing the triathlons full time, I would actually let my weight be my guide as far as how much I needed to eat. And if I needed to eat more of the fatty, kind of more calorie dense plant-based foods. Mm-hmm. So yeah, let your body sometimes talk to you. So this is a comment, and I just wanted to address it. Sometimes I want a chip crunch for hummus, and I know that you can use carrots and veggies, but what about a crunchy chip? So yes, I think so. Just the other day, we got pita bread from the store. We kind of cut it up. We put that in the oven. We baked it like 400 for just maybe 6 minutes. It has the best crunch. It is so healthy, unlike, all those chips that you get, that the second ingredient, safflower oil. So I would go and get pita chips or pita bread and then turn those into pita chips.
And Trader Joe's also, they have corn tortillas that have 0 oil in them, maybe 3 ingredients in them, and just make sure they're the corn tortillas. we do the same thing. We kind of tear them up
Yeah.
or triangulate them, pop them in the air fryer for about 8 minutes. Again, no other seasoning necessary. And you have crisp chips, and they are delicious. They are delicious. Somebody was asking about, and I flagged it here and now I've lost it. And you might know, I'm not sure what NMN is.
I have no idea.
Yeah. And resveratrol, I know that, we often hear
Well,
about
resveratrol is
resveratrol in wine.
Yeah, but it's also in
grapes.
It's also in grapes. So yeah, let's not use there's resveratrol in wine as an excuse to overload ourselves with the booze. For those of you that don't know, I am a advocate for not drinking alcohol. I don't think it's healthy. It's a known toxin to every organ in the body, and I think that most Americans abuse alcohol. So I know so many people that have come to our either Black Mountain 6-day retreat or our Sedona retreat, and we have some really, really heart-to-heart talks about giving up alcohol. And in particular, I had 3 women that came to this last one, and they had all 3 given up alcohol a year earlier, and they said they cannot believe how much better the quality of their life has been without alcohol in it. And so many of us think, I'm going to say erroneously, that you can't have fun in life without alcohol. And I will absolutely tell you wholeheartedly that is absolutely, it's not the truth. It's not the truth. You can, and you deserve to.
Please. Yes. What's your advice for somebody who's almost there, but there's always that cheese or that fish, or there's that one thing that they just can't break. They just can't break that habit. Or alcohol, for instance, might be another one of those things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I find myself, and in talking to a lot of people, that this whole lifestyle, this way of eating, it's easiest when it's very, very black and white. This is what I'm eating and this is what I'm not eating. So as opposed to, oh, you know what, this weekend, I'll have a turkey sandwich or I'll have a steak, but for the most part, I don't ever do it. I just, it's very clear cut. It's like, okay, you're smoking cigarettes or you're not smoking cigarettes. Are you boozing or are you not boozing? Are we doing a little bit of cheese? The most saturated, the food with the most saturated fat. Well, actually, that's not true. But cheese is the number one source of saturated fat in the American diet. But the coconut has more saturated fat than any other food on the planet when it comes to saturated fat. And the same thing with fish. I mean, just to bash on fish for a second, do you really want to be consuming, mercury, PCPs, dioxins? Because there's no water that I know of on the planet anymore that's not polluted and riddled with these toxins. So, I can find all kinds of reasons to stay away from cheese and fish and go 100%, but it's up to you. And I'll just say that I think each and every one of you are worth it. You're deserving of it. And Carrie and I are 100% rooting for you.
And I will always tell somebody, just keep going. Just keep going. If you are in a situation where you, I don't want to use the word cave, but that's the first thing that's like where you cave or you give in and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna have this piece of salmon just to like keep the peace or whatever. Like, don't self-flagellate. Don't say I'm a failure and say, oh, forget it. Now I'm just completely off the wagon. Just, take it one day at a time. I mean, it took me a while to master, master is not even the right word either, but it took me a while to be like, no, this is who I am. And Rip, you were interviewing somebody yesterday, Vegan Vicky, who we're going to have on the podcast here in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah.
And she was joking that she's been vegan for 15 years, and she still goes home to her family, and her family is still like, you still eating that healthy stuff? And I get that too when I go home to my family, because it's also been 15 years. I'm like, you're still eating healthy, huh? And I'm very proudly say, yes, I am. And that's what, I feel like if we can all get to that point where we can stand up for ourselves and advocate for ourselves, then.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Lynn, I know we don't like smoothies, but I have been making the kale, broccoli, banana smoothies and pouring it on my oatmeal. And I am thinking that it's better to get some form than nothing at all. And sure, I would absolutely agree with that. The thing about smoothies that just to kind of go on a little rant on smoothies is that it's such an easy way for us to get calories into our bodies during the day. You just, you throw in your liquid, you throw in some peanut butter, you throw in, an apple, you throw in a banana, you throw in 2 handfuls of spinach, some cauliflower, whatever it is in there. And before you know it, you've got 750 calories in that smoothie. And you drink that in 10 to 15 minutes. And because that fiber has been pulverized up into a million little pieces, it's not doing its job as effectively. And so you get these huge kind of swings with your sugar spikes and then lows, as opposed to consuming it, chewing it the way and masticating it the way we were meant to. And remember, all digestion starts in the mouth when we chew our food. The only thing that we really want you guys drinking, for the most part, during the day is water. Otherwise, we like you masticating your calories. So yes, Lynn, hey, absolutely, it's better than nothing. But I think you guys understand that the other thing about smoothies and drinking your calories in any form is that our brains and our stomachs don't register these calories as calories. And I can guarantee you just about each and every one of you will invariably consume the same amount of additional calories in solid form. So this is why this is pillar 3 of our PlantStrong program, and that is chew your calories, don't drink them.
Common question that we get, and I know that you and Essie, you and your father get this a lot too, especially at your medical immersions that you go to, where even if you're whole food plant-based, your lipids and your blood numbers aren't still great. But there's a lot of factors. So can you explain what some of those factors might be?
Well, yeah. So Kim here, you've been vegan for 3 years and your blood is still not great. You thought your numbers would be lower, and you haven't had alcohol in over a year. First, let me say congratulations on A, being, plant-based, and B, not having alcohol for over a year. That's fantastic. The thing is, just being vegan, just being plant-based is not going to do the trick. It's really important that you're whole food plant-based, and even within that, whole food plant-based, and you're not abusing the higher fat whole food plant-based foods that are still high in the saturated fat, and know that saturated fat will then affect your cholesterol levels. And nuts are 15% saturated fat. Avocados are 15 to 20% saturated fat. If you're doing coconuts, forget about it. It's 92% saturated fats. So things to think about. If you're doing the diet cheeses and the Beyond Meat burgers and the Earth Balance spreads and all of the vegan plant-based frozen dinners that are out there, the Amy's burritos, that are riddled with oil, this will affect your total cholesterol level, your HDL, your LDL, your triglycerides. So this is why we find it imperative with our coaches in our coaching program. You got to keep a food log of what you're eating for at least 2 weeks. And then we review that with you, and we let you know what you're doing right and where we can make course corrections. And it's absolutely invaluable, because we have people that say, I'm doing this 110% correctly. And then we get their food logs and we realize, you know what? They're not even doing this 50% correct. So the proof is in the details.
Mm, mm. And I just want to shout John out and thank him for his transparency. And I want everyone to feel supported here, wherever you are on your Plant Strong journey. There's no shame here in what any of us are doing. We're all on a learning process, learning journey. So I just appreciate you, John, just asking and saying that, hey, on occasion you still eat meat. But I like your question for Rip. I'm curious too.
Oh, well, great question. And so the last time that I know of that I had any kind of an animal product was in 2000. And let me tell you the story. And I wrote about this in, I think it was the Engine 2 Diet book, my first book. So when I was doing the triathlons, every year from 1988 to 2000, I would do this race on the island of St. Croix. And it was called Beauty and the Beast. And it was absolutely this brutal, brutal race.
I know that race.
Yes. Okay. And there was a restaurant on the property called Cheeseburgers in Paradise. And so once a year, after the race, I would go to Cheeseburgers in Paradise and I'd have a cheeseburger with the French fries. And I did that for almost like 12 years in a row. And then after the 12th year, and I would usually get halfway through and I'm like, oh my God. The first bite, I'd be like, oh my God, this is so good. And then after halfway, I'd be like, I don't miss this at all. But in 2000 is when I finally decided, you know what? I don't ever need to do this once a year ever again. And so it's been 23 years since I have knowingly touched and eaten an animal product.
Wow, that's amazing. Along those same lines, a question that I had written down, Rip, I haven't seen in the chat, but I think people are curious about you and your habits. Is there an appliance or an accessory in your kitchen that you guys use more than anything else? And then along that line, is there something that you and your family batch cook every week without fail?
Yep. So the one appliance that I use every single day, Carrie, and you might be disappointed by my answer here. It's my big bowl. It's my big bowl.
Oh, your cereal.
It's my cereal bowl, but I use this bowl. It's this bowl, but I use it for literally almost every meal. So I use it for my breakfast bowl. I use it for my lunch bowl. Usually it's leftovers that I throw in there and heat up in the microwave. And then for dinner, everybody else likes to get a plate, but I put, whether it is like a mushroom spinach lasagna, whether it is a lentil oat loaf that we had last night, whether it is just a pasta primavera dish, whether it's rice and beans, I put it all in my bowl. So that's the one appliance I use more than anything else personally is my bowl.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then the second half of that was, what was it?
Is there something that your family batch cooks every week that you just always have on hand?
Yeah. So I would say every Sunday I make pancakes. Mm-hmm. And so we usually batch cook pancakes and or waffles. And then I put those in the freezer so the kids can, if they feel like it, they can just pop those in the toaster oven and they've got some pancakes or waffle for a quick breakfast during the week.
That's great.
Yeah. And then of course, we always do potatoes and we always do rice. So the usual.
Yep. Another popular question that I know you hear a lot and that we are emailed quite a bit. All of these substitutes, all of these meat and cheese substitutes that are out there, and gosh darn it, some of them are quite tasty. I hate to admit, but not healthy.
Yeah. So, every one of those things I'm looking at, whether it's follow your heart, I think the second and third ingredient are canola oil and palm oil. It's probably 90% fat and it's 110 calories a tablespoon. So that to me doesn't qualify as PlantStrong. Gardein, again, it's soy protein isolates, concentrates, pea proteins. This is not a whole food PlantStrong product. And same thing with Beyond and Impossible. They're kind of, listen, there is a time and a place for all these products, but very, very few and far between. And if this is a weekly occurrence, your health will suffer. And the Beyond and Impossible burgers are just kind of Frankenburgers with no whole food plant-based ingredients in them. It's all oil, sugars, salts, and either soy or pea protein concentrates, isolates. So not a fan.
Mm. And Rip, Maria says you have to make and sell your big bowl. And at first I thought she meant your cereal, which I'm like, hey, you already do. But hey, Maria, my advice to you is to go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy a wheelbarrow, because that's about the size of Rip the bowl that Rip uses for his cereal. It's a big bowl. It literally is a big bowl.
Yeah. I'm just looking here. I'm just jumping around, but
sure.
Lori Williams here. Can you recommend a good weight bearing workout for a beginner, 60 years old, starting to see signs of aging bones? So Lori, one of the things my father recommends is, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but go on Amazon, buy a vest, a weighted vest. You can get them at different weights, 15, 20, 25 pounds. And then during the day, when you're walking around the house, put that vest on and just do it for like 30, 45 minutes. And just having that excessive weight on your skeleton, on your frame, while you're walking, moving, bending over, cleaning, doing whatever, will be pretty darn dramatic. So that is exactly how I would start.
That's great.
So Carrie, I've got about 2 more questions, and then I got to peel. So So what do you think?
So I know there's so many. Somebody asked, and those chats are going so quickly here. Your thoughts on, where was it? Like protein powders and things like that. So pea protein powders. We already kind of know your thought on smoothies. But what and maybe I can frame this up in a different way too, because you spent decades as a professional triathlete, so you had to fuel your body. What was some of your go-to fuel kind of to keep yourself satiated before, during, and after your training?
Well, I think that I'm half horse. I think I love oats. I really do. I love oats. I love oatmeal. I love steel cut oats, oat groats. So I did a lot of oats. And the great thing about oats is oats are 18% fat, 18% protein, and then the remainder, 18 is 32. So the remaining 68% is coming from, right, carbohydrates. Yep. Which is what, as a triathlete, that's my fuel source. Yep. I am, did I ever do protein powders? Occasionally, when I was training for an Ironman triathlon, and I just chewing and eating became like a 4th workout for the day. But otherwise, no, I would just get everything I needed from my food. And I just think when in doubt, try and get everything that you can. Get your protein, get your fats, get your carbohydrates, get all of your vitamins, your minerals, get everything from your food. Colin Campbell likes to say that there's nothing can beat the whole, a whole food, because you have this synergistic effect where your body can recognize now the calcium that's in the green beans. It can recognize the potassium that's in the banana. But when you just take a supplement, your body kind of is going, whoa, what's going on here? And the truth of the matter is, Carrie and everybody listening, is that most supplementation, so like whether it's vitamin A, vitamin E, selenium, a lot of these antioxidants, when taken in supplemental form, actually can do more harm than benefit. And there's been extensive, research and meta-analyses that have been put together to actually show this. So, unless you have a known deficiency, we don't think that you should be supplementing really with too much other than, B12. If you have a deficiency, D3, there are some cases maybe for DHA for people that have a hard time converting that ALA, that long chain ALA into the DHA and the EPA. But yeah. So the protein powders, I went way off on a tangent there. So the protein powders, most of these, they've removed the vitamins, the minerals, the fiber, the water, the antioxidants, the phytonutrients, and you just have this big clump of protein. And most Americans are protein toxic to begin with. We're getting too much protein. So I would really question, do you really need a protein powder? Are you training for an Ironman? Are you doing a 100-mile run? And if you're not, if you're like me these days and you're just doing a hour-long swim practice and maybe in the afternoon you're doing 45 minutes pickleball, you just need the food you're eating and good old H2O. You don't need to be messing around with protein powders that are just more calories and also unhealthy.
Thank you, Rip. So mindful. I like the actual veggie burgers as well, because they literally are just actual veggies. There's no fillers in them, no nothing. So I saw that your comment there. My final question for you, Rip, and I think this might be a good way to wrap it up for everybody, which is, we are going into a holiday weekend. And so some of us may be struggling. Some of us may be a little fearful about going into situations that might not be friendly, or they might be pressure filled. So do you have just advice for those of us who might need it this weekend?
Yeah.
Or so any holiday.
Be an advocate for your health. Your health is your number one asset in this life. And when you have your health, you have everything. And when you lose your health, it's a pretty quick downward spiral. And you only have one wish when you don't have your health, and that is to be healthy. When you have your health, you can have thousands of wishes. So don't succumb to family pressure. If you feel like you need to say something, then I would always employ the tact, or I should say the method that Doug Lisle suggests, which is you're just making people feel uncomfortable. And so let them know that, hey, you know what? I'm on a roll. This is just an experiment. I'm going to, just do this until May 1st. And I would really appreciate your support instead of, you trying to sabotage my best efforts here. And so anyway, everybody handles it a different way. But at the end of the day, know that this is your body. This is your health we're talking about. And I can tell you, there's nothing that feels as good as being supremely healthy and on top of your game.
Thank you, Rip. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Where are all the claps for everybody? Thumbs up and everything else.
But Carrie, let me just say to everybody that's joining us today, because we had about 200 people today, just how much I appreciate you all being part of this community. You're right. Health is wealth through and through. You guys, own it. It's yours for the taking. And Carrie and I are rooting for each and every one of you. So is the whole PlantStrong team. And I hope to see y'all sometime in the future. Maybe it's next Friday.
Maybe next Friday. All right. Everyone have a wonderful weekend.
Great Easter weekend for sure.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
Bye.